Shabbat Shalom. Our parsha this Shabbat is a double header. It's a double parsha, Behar Bechukotai. It sets up the foundation for freedom that God has divined for us. We were set free. However, to truly own that freedom, we had to be willing to follow God's commands. We had to be willing to live an orderly, faith-based life and to behave in the ways of the upright. We are to understand that as we must observe Shabbat and rest to replenish ourselves, so too must the land. Every 49th year would be considered a Jubilee year, and in it we must honor freedom, even for the slaves that we had at that time, and set them free, just as God did for us. We are told that we must maintain the sanctuary with gifts of support and know that if we follow God's commands, we will be blessed or we will be cursed. Our internal sanctuary actually depends upon it. Ultimate blessing can be found within a structured, orderly life, divined by God, with respect for the land that we have been given and the people who till it. And it's not just farming the land. This building, which we are meant to support, sits on a plot of land, and all of us till it with our energy, with our spirit, with our volunteerism, with our heart and our souls. In 1986, Elie Wiesel stated when receiving the Nobel Peace Prize, as long as one dissident is in prison, our freedom will not be true. As long as one child is hungry, our life will be filled with anguish and shame. What all these victims need above all is to know that they are not alone, that we are not forgetting them, that when their voices are stifled, we shall lend them our own, that while their freedom depends on ours, the quality of our freedom depends on theirs. Our lives are dependent upon one another, and the responsibility to lift up the fallen and to be accountable. The quality of our lives and the blessings that we receive rely upon the actions that we are willing to take to preserve not only life, but our land too. We have a lot of real estate within our own being. This is our sacred vessel, and it houses our soul, and it carries us around, carries our soul around for our lifetime. And that's what I say when people move on and they pass on, and especially when the young children are there, this is not how you remember someone. That body was their car that drove them around. That was their sacred, holy vessel. That was the sanctuary that housed their soul, but their spirit we set free with the prayers that we do and the love that we will always share and feel. Those in servitude, according to this parsha, will at one point be set free, and the land would enjoy freedom as well, knowing that not one thing shall ever be used up completely. So look at what's happening to our world right now. Are we following this commandment? Some of us are trying to do our part, but it's complicated and challenging. All should have value: a body, a piece of land, a designated time to rest. How many actually truly take time to rest? That's what we're supposed to do on Shabbat, to rest in order to truly enjoy the freedom which has been given to us and bestowed to us by God. Rabbi David Lyon states on this parsha, to be truly free is to possess the human power to choose to live by the rules that bind us. To be free of any rules is to be lawless. Therefore, the rules that bind us should at best hold us fast to principles and ethics that lead us to our greatest human potential. For Jews, the rules that bind us are Torah. In Parsha Behar this week, we read the famous verse, "You shall proclaim release throughout the land for all its inhabitants." Humanity thrives in places where freedom from hunger, redemption from bondage of any form, and release from tribulations unleash our greatest human potential. Even ourselves, if we're in a state of bondage, if we're feeling held back or tied down, we can't be our best selves. We are not able to tap into and share our highest and best human potential. In Bechukotai, we read, if you follow my laws and faithfully observe my commandments, then God will cause you to prosper and be blessed. But there's a whole litany of, if you do not do this, this will happen. If you do not obey. Our sages knew well that prosperity and blessings flowed down in abundance from God, but they also observed the suffering despite the faithfulness to God's covenant that existed in the world. They cited Job, who suffered blamelessly. We find his days are determined. You know the number of his months. You have set him limits that he cannot pass. In citing Job, they raised the question, what, if anything, would forestall the end of our days if all was actually indeed foreseen, and if our days were limited even when we did God's commandments, when we obeyed? Our sages affirmed their faith that all of life is a gift from God. They embraced what was revealed to them by God and what they could do with what was revealed to them. Rather than be disillusioned, and this is what we need to take heart about and own ourselves, rather than be disillusioned about what remained concealed from them, they grasped for opportunities to do mitzvot, to respond to God's command, and to know that yes, even when judgment came instead of mercy, that was God's will too. They cited God's goodness to King Solomon, even above that which God gave to his father, King David, recounting God's words. And I grant you also what you did not ask for, both riches and glory, all your life. And I will further grant you long life if you will walk in my ways, observe my laws and my commandments. The book of Leviticus, as I said, ends today with a list of curses, listing some of the ways that God will spurn the Israelites if they fail to keep the faith. In our old Siddur, some of you might remember the blue one, the gates of prayer, we read, just because we are human, we are prisoners of the years. Yet that very prison is the room of discipline in which we, driven by the urgency of time, create. Freedom from that prison lies within our ability to choose the rules that will bind us. Torah gives us these rules and the structured order with which to fashion our lives, and yes, so too our blessing. We all have free will to go along with our freedom. We need to choose wisely what we do with it, how we uphold it, and yes, even how we abuse it. Look at our world today. There is still so much unrest, thousands of years ago, and yes, even today. We have Russia encroaching on the Ukraine's right to independence, to freedom, a freedom which threatens the entire world as well. We are all balancing our lives on a tightrope, which can either be a very fragile thread or something of true substance and strong foundation. We disrupt the balance when we abuse our blessings and each other. We are meant to be kind. We are meant to be thoughtful. We are meant to treat the other as ourselves. We are meant to look out to those in need, to provide support when necessary, to be generous, and yes, ultimately to support God and our sanctuary. This one that we are praying in, the land that we live upon, and yes, even the one that houses our soul. In order to truly know freedom and experience great blessing, we must honor all and be ever mindful of God. We must not take advantage, and we must know that we will reap what we sow. Our very freedom is dependent upon our ability to live in divine ways. As stated earlier in this book of Leviticus today, at the end we say, Chazak, Chazak, v'nit chazek. Be strong be strong, and let us strengthen each other. So as we go through this Shabbat, and actually what's left of this year, we're almost halfway through it, let us remember the saying that as one book closes, another one opens. Let us live in ways that honor each other, respect and nurture our land and our world. And let us value the freedom that we celebrated just a few weeks ago at Passover, being ever mindful that it can be very fragile at best. It is up to us to nurture it. It is up to us to support, propagate, protect, and honor it. So, repeat the Hebrew after me. Chazak. Chazak. V'nit chazek. V'nit chazek. Let us be strong, and let us strengthen each other. Shabbat shalom.